paleontologists have tried to turn Archaeopteryx into an earthbound feathered dinosaur, which is what you're trying to do tonight, but it's not. It's a bird, a perching bird, and no amount of paleo-babble is going to change that. Archaeopteryx had...
Time is up.
Watch video number 4 to get the rest of it.
This next question again is for you, Dr. Hoven. If you believe that the universe was created 6,000 years ago, how do you explain rocks dating back millions and billions of years? Doesn't carbon dating prove millions of years?
I've had this one open 3 times hoping we'd get to this, and now here we are. It's going to take me a minute to get there. I cover this in great detail on my website, or video number 7 about carbon dating. Carbon dating, I wish we had 2 hours to go through how it works. I'm very familiar with it. It doesn't work at all, and I'll show you why. Based on several obvious assumptions, and a freshman law student could take it apart in a courtroom. Living mollusk shells, carbon dated 2,300 years old. Science Magazine, volume 144. Freshly killed seal, carbon dated 1,300 years old. Antarctic Journal, volume 6. Shells from living snails, carbon dated 27,000 years old. One part of a mammoth, carbon dated 29,000 years old. Another part dated 44,000 years old. Geological Survey, professional paper 862. Baby edema, carbon dated. One part was 40,000, another part's 26,000, and the wood next to it is 9,000. The lower leg of a mammoth, carbon dated 15,000 years old. The skin was 21,000 years old. 2 mammoths side by side gave ages of 22,000 and 16,000. Living penguins dated 8,000 years old. They had, in Berkeley, California, the most advanced dating center we have. Tried to date Homo erectus fossils. They thought it would be 250,000. He kept making the same startling find. Swisher said the fossils are 53,000 years at most and 27,000 years old, at least. What I'd like to point out, Your Honor, that's a 96% error. I think this is a little bit less than an exact science.
It's time.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with all these examples that Dr. Hoven is pulling up, but I am familiar with one of them because it's one that's been repeated many times by creationists, and it's totally misleading. There are indeed snails that have been dated, living snails, which have been dated to 3,000 years old. But there are times when radiocarbon dating is not applicable. Radiocarbon dating assumes that the carbon in the organism came from the atmosphere. In the atmosphere, the amount of carbon-14 is fairly constant because cosmic rays are hitting the atmosphere and converting nitrogen into carbon-14. But those snails picked up their carbon from carbonate rocks that had dissolved into the stream where they were living. And because of that, the carbonate rocks were very old, and the carbon that was in the carbonate rocks was very deficient in carbon-14 compared to carbon dioxide that's in the air. And that's why those snails appeared to be very old. In fact, carbon dating has been applied to tree rings, and the correspondence between the tree rings and the carbon dates has been shown to be very accurate. It's actually, the expected error is about 10% because the amount of carbon-14 in the atmosphere seems to vary, and it has been shown to vary over the last 100 years or so based on, it varies, and it's correlated with activity on the sun, which is correlated with the amount of cosmic rays. In fact, carbon-14 is not used for dating rocks at all. It's only used for dating things less than 50,000 years old. The carbon-14 half-life is too short to use for dating longer things. And so the other elements that I mentioned back in the beginning of my presentation are used for dating rocks.
The next question is for both speakers. Either one of you can start, whoever would like to go first. The question is, right now science is arguing the evidence of design. What is the nature of this argument and importance of design in this discussion?
You want to go first? Okay. If I understand, the question is, what is the importance of the argument from design? You know, things appear to be designed. I would say it's real simple. There was a designer, and I happen to know him personally. The argument from design was Paley's argument that frustrated Darwin for years, and Darwin in his book, The Origin of Species, where he never did really address the origin of species. I've got the book out in the car. I'm sorry I was late. I didn't have time to set everything up here tonight. But the argument from design is as yet unanswered. If you find a 15-inch rim and a 15-inch tire, you would assume the tire was designed to fit the rim. And they are, of course. We find billions of examples in the world where things are obviously designed for what they do. The evolutionist has this enormous amount of faith, and I do really greatly admire their faith, to believe that these things could happen by chance. Well, again, you're welcome to believe that, but that's not science. That's your religious belief. Now, people hold to that religious belief for various different reasons. We could get into that if you'd like, but the fact is it's not scientific. It looks to be everything's designed. And you don't have to see the designer to believe he exists. I've got a watch made in Japan. Casio Databank holds 300 phone numbers. Calculator, stopwatch, countdown timer. Does not tell time. You have to look at it. But this is really an amazing machine. I don't have to see the designer to believe he exists. I've never been to Japan. I can stand here in America and say, wow, that guy must be smart. That's logical. I can look at a single cell under the microscope, and one cell is more complex than the space shuttle. And I can say, wow, the designer must be really smart. That's just logical. There had to be a designer.
I think what the question is referring to as the argument from design is a recent thing that comes out of discoveries in physics and so forth, that the universe is very finely tuned to make life possible. Supposedly, if some of the basic constants of carbon atoms were just a little bit different, not enough carbon would have formed in the centers of stars long ago to even make life possible. There's an assumption, which I must say I don't like, in what Dr. Hovind says. There's an assumption that someone who believes in evolution does not believe in God. But that is not true. I believe that there's a designer and that he made the universe as a whole. Not every little worm and every little bacterium, but made the universe as a whole with laws that would let it keep going on its own. And that's basically something that it's a faith based on in part on this argument from design, but also just from an understanding of life and a sense of spirituality. And so believing in evolution doesn't mean you don't believe in God. It just means you don't believe in the narrow view of God that says God created the world 6,000 years ago.
The next question is for Dr. Hovind. We are able to witness star evolution. In the space, there are tons of matter, gas, and particles. Those particles form in star-forming regions, nebulas, and we are able to see that as well as the evolution and death of stars. How can you say that solar evolution is not science, that it is religion? We are able to look at that.
The example the person gave there is we can see the evolution of stars. We can see solar death. We see stars destroyed. We see stars